Hey everybody, welcome to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast, dedicated to raising awareness, sharing IBD stories, and offering support for those with Crohn's and colitis. Together, we can share knowledge, experiences, and help show the world the many faces of IBD. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Gish, Crohn's warrior since 2006 and lifelong fitness fanatic. My guest today is Stella Rose Carr, who's been battling IBD since childhood. She's here to share her Crohn's story and how her journey in fighting this disease fuels her desire to live life to the fullest. Thank you so much for joining me today, Stella, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and to share my story with whoever listens to this podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to have you share it. I know the stories make such a difference in our community to be able to hear what other people are going through and hear those stories. So I appreciate you getting ready to share yours. And speaking of that, why don't you go ahead and start off the show by telling how your IBD journey started?
Sure. Well, my journey started long ago in 2002. That was when I was diagnosed, so the journey probably started a bit before then, but I was a sickly child. In elementary school, I was often out sick because I had strep throat a lot, and then after a while, it wasn't really strep. They thought I might have had a blood disease because I was very anemic, the typical pale and sunken eyes. Just kind of a frail little girl. And so after doing the runaround with a bunch of doctors and no real results, somebody had suggested that my parents take me to a gastroenterologist. I went to an ENT, I went to a hematologist, like all the stuff. And finally, I went to a gastro. And when I was in second or third grade, I had a colonoscopy for the first time, colonoscopy and endoscopy. And
wow. I'm going to jump in real quick. What was that like to be so young? Do you remember that, just being in second grade of having to prepare for a colonoscopy? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I remember it was very daunting, I didn't really understand what was going to happen. It was at a pediatric hospital, so I remember in preparation for it, my mom took me to Build-A-Bear, and so I made a stuffed animal that I was going to take with me into the doctor's room, when they put me under. Mm-hmm. And so since it was a peds hospital, they gave my doll a mask as they gave me one, and they put scented chapstick or something inside the mask so it didn't smell as bad. Just kind of, doing things to kind of calm the situation. So I remember feeling very anxious when I actually was going in to be put under. And obviously the prep isn't very enjoyable. So when I was really young, trying to drink all the bowel prep wasn't very fun at all. So my mom was trying to, make it. I sat in bed and watched cartoons all day, and we talked about all the foods that I wanted to eat when I came out from the procedure. And so once I went to have the procedure, they count you down, and I was under. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty painless from there. But I remember waking up, and my parents were a bit, sad because they can diagnose it pretty quickly. And once they are in there, so the doctors told them the diagnosis or, tentative diagnosis. And then I remember having to go back the next week to the doctor's office. But then after I was home, recovering from the procedure, I had a wish list of I wanted Taco Bell and Subway and all these terrible foods that I used to eat. And none of them sounded good anymore because once you haven't really eaten much, and your stomach's a bit upset from that, the last thing you really want is a Taco Bell burrito. But that's what my 8-year-old brain wanted when I was going into it. So it's a fun, not so fun memory.
Yeah, I bet, especially being so young. How many years do you think you were suffering with some symptoms and just kind of being, you said you were a sick child. Was it probably 2, 3, 4 years before you actually had the colonoscopy?
Yeah, so I don't remember, like, the years before that too much as far as, being sick. My mom said that when I was little, I was constipated all the time,
Hmm.
and so there's probably early symptoms that were happening, but when a kid's so young, you're not really sure what to pin it on.
Yeah.
So I did have issues with bowel movements when I was younger, and then, um yeah, just like first grade into second grade until we started kind of trying to figure out what was wrong. Um, I was just like, they thought it was like strep or colds and stuff. So it wasn't that I was in the hospital or anything to that extreme, but just kind of never really feeling great. Um, and obviously, yeah, I don't remember it too much. I just remember when we started to go to the doctor and I would complain about my throat hurting or
Yeah.
stomach aches and stuff.
And that's probably a good thing that you don't remember most of it, because it probably wouldn't be good memories of just being
Yeah,
sick all the time. So there's a silver
definitely.
lining. So once they got your diagnosis, what protocols did they start you on as a child to help
Mhm.
treat your disease? And did those things start working? So tell me a little bit about your path from then to where you're at now. Did you ever find remission? Did you try different drugs? And kind of
Mhm.
take me from that point up to where you're at now.
Yeah, so it's been a long and winding road. The first
Hmm.
treatments I was on were prednisone and acecol, and I think 6-MP at some point. And so for several years, that was like a few years, I would say, I was on those pills. Prednisone obviously was just a few months, but the impacts were really negative, I would say. Even at a young age, it doesn't do well for your mental health and physical, feeling.
Hmm.
So to go through that prednisone experience in elementary school was pretty, I would say, traumatizing. Coming
Yeah.
to school the next after the summer and teachers not recognizing me and friends asking why I was fat last year and things like that, because kids just really don't understand. They
Hmm.
see that you got bigger and that now you're not big anymore or whatever, and so. Um, Going through that as an adult is not any more fun, but at least people understand, like, oh, it's medication, you have an illness. But when you're that young, people just see the physical effects and don't really know the right questions to ask. So that I was
And
glad.
especially other children, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So that was never really fun. That first year, I would say, was a tough year of diagnosis. And then once I was able to taper off the prednisone, but actually, when I was on prednisone, I started to love food. So I'm not sure if that's where
Hmm.
your food obsession came from, but I watched a
I think I was born with my food obsession.
yeah. I watched a lot of Food Network to get me through my hunger cravings and started to cook, and so that was fun, and, I started some new, like, hobbies around that age to kind of get my mind away from, um, that stuff. So I think my mom did a good job about that, of, like, kinda letting me find something to bring more joy into my life in that point. Um
Hmm.
and so, yeah, once I was tapered off the prednisone and deflated, I think I was just on Acecol for a while longer, and then it wasn't really working. So in middle school, sometime I started on Humira. And so for a couple years,
Hmm.
my mom was giving me Humira injections, and that was back before it was in a pen. So you had to draw the medicine with the needle and do all that. So many a pokes in the butt back then in those days.
Oh. Hmm.
And a couple years of that treatment, and it wasn't really showing improvement. And then the next hurdle was um, I wasn't growing. And so I saw some gastro doctors again, and I saw some endocrinologists, and we were debating having me take some human growth hormone at the time. And
Hmm.
then eventually the doctor went in again for a colonoscopy and saw that the ileum and my small intestine was so thickened that I hadn't been absorbing nutrients, and so the only fix at that point was to get it out. And so in 8th grade, I went in for surgery and was down for the count for at least 2 weeks, maybe a month. It was around winter break, between the holidays. And so I went in and they took out 6 inches of my small intestine. And then apparently I had a belly button hernia. So they are umbilical hernia. And so they took that out and they took my appendix out, made some room for all the other swollen guts. And then once I, healed from the surgery, things started to improve a lot. And so I don't remember what medications I was on in high school, like after the surgery.
Mhm. Did you
So
start growing again?
yeah, it took like a year to kind of heal, but then once I was healed up, I grew every year in high school. So I had like a delayed puberty and everything. So people were always like every year I came back to school, I looked different because I just kept growing, and
Mhm.
that was also tough on my like self-aware, body image as well, because although I was still very tiny, to see yourself grow from like 60 pounds to 120 pounds in like 4 years, it's really
Yeah.
dramatic. And so although it was a healthy weight and growth, it was still, I didn't fit in clothes anymore. And just experiencing that was also tough. So, yeah, I don't remember what my like my medications were after the surgery. I know it was a pill. Um, oh, I've forgotten the most exciting part of my story.
Yeah, do tell.
When I was before the surgery, so I was still, I think it was before Humira even, or somewhere between
Mhm.
Asacol and surgery. They tried me on Remicade, and I was one of the lucky ones that had anaphylactic shock from the Remicade. And so, about the second or third dose, my mom had gone out to get me lunch while I was hooked up at the hospital. And then, all of a sudden, I couldn't breathe. And so, luckily, there was a nurse nearby, and the thing started beeping. And so, they ran in, and I just remember blacking out and waking up. And I was like, Mom, it's not like I died. And must have been like in early, like late elementary or early middle school years.
Yeah, maybe 10 or 11, it sounds like, if it was
Yeah.
before the Humira surgery. Yeah.
And so that was, a taxing experience as well.
I'm
Um
sure your mom would have a few more, words to describe how that was
Oh, yeah,
to come back
she
and
was crying. She's like, "I just went to get you french fries and you almost died," and yeah, she was very distraught about that because luckily she
yeah,
wasn't there. We talked about it being a blessing that she wasn't in the room when it
yeah.
happened, because that would have been really scary for her to actually witness. Um
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so luckily none of my family members witnessed it, but they were, there by my bedside when I woke up. So no more Remicade for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to high school. Um, I was pretty healthy in high school. I don't remember having any flares. I did the first like year and a half after the surgery, I was still getting sick a lot. Not sometimes it was stomach issues, but a lot of times I was just like my immune system was shot. So I missed a lot of school my freshman year of high school, so much that they wanted to hold me back. So even though I had good grades, they like legally you have to be in school for X amount of days, and I missed
Mhm.
so many, and so my mom had to fight with the school district, and then eventually I got an IEP, which like individual education plan. So normally, individuals that have like mental illness or more physical disabilities will have those. But because it was impacting my presence in school, we created a plan that would, allow me to miss more than the legal amount of days.
Did she have did she work with the school? I'm just thinking if other people are listening and they've got kids, is that
Mhm.
something that they can research with the school, or is that somewhere that they can learn more about?
Yeah, so she was luckily she worked as an adapted PE teacher at the time, so she was used to working with the schools and like with IEPs, so she knew kind of how it worked. Um, Depending on your school district, like every school has some sort of option like that. So I think working with your doctor to get proper like medical documentation and showing what types of accommodations. So like I needed to not I needed to be allowed to miss more than the required days of school. I was allowed to eat in class because, sometimes when it's lunchtime or snack time, and if you're not feeling great, then, you don't want to eat at those times, but then you're going to be hungry later. So normally, you're not allowed to eat in the middle of class, but my teachers had to accommodate that. So if I wanted to snack when I was hungry and feeling okay, I could do that. And if I needed like extra time on a test or anything because I needed to run to the bathroom or was having, an episode, then I could request that as well. And also, usually you need a bathroom pass to leave. And if someone else has it, then you can't go. So my teachers were all briefed that like, I don't need a bathroom pass. Like if I have to go to the bathroom, I can just excuse myself and go to the bathroom and come back. Or if I need to go to the nurse's office for whatever reason, I don't need to like let them know why. I can just say like I'm going to the nurse so they know where I am, but it doesn't have to be, the teacher can't really push back on it. So that was really helpful. I transferred schools after the first year where I had, a lot of challenges at that school. And from then on, they were really accommodating.
That's good. That's good to hear that there's programs out there and that there is actually some relief in those senses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you stay on Humira through high school? Because I think you mentioned you started that in middle school, and then you did pretty well through high school. Were you able to stay on that Humira regimen?
So I don't remember. I think after the surgery, I wasn't back on Humira. Um, and then I went to college and I ended up having a flare, I think like a stress induced flare. It wasn't too severe in the
Mhm.
fall of my freshman year. And so I ended up going to the hospital because I had like a blockage or something. And my roommate was really awesome and taking me there, and my friends like made me cards and stuff. But after
Mhm.
another colonoscopy, they decided that I had a flare. And so I was set up with a doctor there near my school, and he got me back on Humira. And then from then on, like my freshman year in high school, I was on Humira till about like a year after college. And then I was pretty healthy most of college, didn't really have any issues after that. Humira was helping me out. And then I was tired of having to do, every 2 weeks. And if I wanted to travel, I had to figure out how to bring enough medicine, if I was gone for more than 2 weeks. And it was just kind of feeling like it was restricting me and my freedom a bit. And
Mhm.
so I asked the doctor if there were any other medicines that were less frequent but similar. And so the doctor got me set up with Stelara, and it did not work. So I was on Stelara for about a year and just really was feeling not great. And so I think I put myself into a flare again by choosing to switch medicines, even though, the Humira was working. Um, so then after a year of struggling with the Stelara, I moved back home and then tried a new doctor, had another colonoscopy, still flaring. They put me on Humira again, but at a more intense dosage. So I started doing it every week instead of every other
Mhm.
week. And then still hadn't found any relief after like a year of that dosing. And so then now I'm on Entivyo. So I've moved now to like my fourth doctor. I'm now seeing someone at the Mayo Clinic here in Arizona. So it's a bit more
Mhm.
holistic. There's different doctors and specialists available. And so they started me on Entivyo earlier this year, like the beginning of this year, and that's an infusion, and that drug is specifically for Crohn's and colitis, whereas others, were started for arthritis or whatever other rheumatic inflammatory disease, and then approved for Crohn's. So this one was specifically made for Crohn's and colitis. And unfortunately, I still haven't been finding a lot of relief from it. I know what I felt like when I was doing well on Humira, and I haven't really gotten back to that. So I wish I could be on here telling everyone that I've mastered my flare, but this is a disease like a game of chess,
Yeah. It is. And, I think it's good that you're sharing your story and that, you're not saying, all is perfect and everything is great, because the reality of it is, like you said, it's a chess game, and this disease goes on, and we try to outsmart it, and we can't, and it changes and it morphs. And so I think it's important to highlight that, we're not all always going to be in remission, at least not yet, until they can come up with a cure. But and so I think it's important to share your story and the trials that you've been through, and just the journey and the struggle of it. But speaking kind of along those same lines, you're still fighting very hard. You're trying to find what's working, but yet you really do have a great sense of humor. You have a great personality. Just watching you on your social media, and tell me a little bit about this mental side of it. You're struggling with this disease that, if the listeners of this podcast either have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or know someone who does, so they're very familiar with the journey. But how have you managed to keep this outlook of just humor and going forward? Tell me a little bit about that part of your journey.
Yeah, so it's really been something that I've managed since I was younger with it, because it's an easy disease to make into a joke. Poop jokes are endless. Um, so I think, even like when I had the Remicade reaction, and my mom, was sitting by my bedside crying, and I was like 11 or 12, and I'm like, it's not like I died, Mom. Like, why are you so upset? Like just kind of always making things on the lighter side. I've always, it's never fun to go to the doctor or get all poked and prodded. And so always trying to make my nurses laugh or say something silly to the doctor. And some are more receptive to it than others, and others just give you a straight face and are like, why are you trying to make this a joke? But you have to do what, lightens the
Yeah.
mood, because otherwise it's a bit too serious. But I think something that really was transitional in that, or transformative in that, in my personality, was the opportunity to go to the Painted Turtle, which is a summer camp, one of Paul Newman's summer camps for individuals that have chronic illnesses or life-threatening illnesses. And so I found out about it when I was in the 8th grade. And so unfortunately, I could have been going my whole diagnosis, but I didn't know about it until then. And so at a Crohn's and colitis walk, somebody I met had been there, and they told me about it. So the summer before I went into high school, I went to this camp, and, that's a teenage years, and it's a sensitive time for anyone, but especially when you're, living with a disease. It was really awesome to meet people my own age that were also living with this condition or similar conditions, and have experienced the same challenges. And many of them had been diagnosed, closer to that age, but there were a handful who had been diagnosed at young age like me. And so it was just really awesome to share stories, and to experience that at camp really allows you to be yourself and embrace the weirdness, the grossness, and allow that confidence to build in understanding what life with the disease means. And so having that before I went into high school, I think really allowed me to be more of myself when I went to high school, regardless of the disease. And a few more summers of going to that camp, I think, really continued to allow me to be an advocate and more proud of my disease and willing to talk about it and share with others, because when I was younger, it was something that my close friends knew about, and some people at school, my teachers, but it wasn't something I went around like shouting to the world. But in high school, still, somewhat embarrassing, but I was learning how to be confident and not afraid to share or tell people what I had, or why I might miss school, or why I'm in the bathroom for so long, or just having those conversations with people who understand it, is good practice for
Yeah.
when you have to tell people who don't understand it. And so I think that, just along with my own personality of being lighthearted and silly, has really allowed me to keep that mentality and not let the disease kind of get the best of me, even when it has those challenging impacts on my physical health or mental health.
We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with the rest of our interview. Hey everyone! Many of you know how much I love the Intestinal Fortitude supplements. Ever since discovering these products when I interviewed the founder, creator, and Crohn's warrior, Will Jenkins, for this podcast, I've been using their probiotic, gut lining repair, and anti-inflammatory. These products were developed by a Crohn's warrior specifically for those of us with IBD, and for me, they have become an important part of keeping my symptoms, including mucus and inflammation, at bay. I truly love these products, and now I'm excited to let you know that if you use code CFF10, that's CFF like Crohn's Fitness Food, you can receive 10% off your order. Visit crohnsfitnessfood.com/IF. And if you want to hear more about the creator, Will Jenkins, be sure to listen to episode 11 of this podcast. And now, back to the show. And does your family, do they kind of keep that same lighthearted attitude kind of with you, just to find the happiness and laugh and joke?
Yeah, I think they're definitely a bunch of goofballs, and they, I think they approach it with a bit more sensitivity at times. When they see me not feeling well, I can kind of see it on their face that they feel bad. Or my mom is always like, "I don't know how you do it," So
Yeah.
they chime in on the jokes too, but I think by way, seeing any loved one suffer isn't fun. So I think for me, it's more of a matter of fact, but for them, they feel it more of like they wish they could help and they can't. So it's
Yeah.
maybe sometimes harder for them to take the lighthearted approach.
Yeah, because it is hard to watch someone else suffer with something that, most humans, I think we want, for the people we care and love, we want to be able to fix them. And when you can't, it's hard to watch that.
Right. And I've had supportive friends as well along the way, and not making me feel like embarrassed for whatever might happen. And my nickname in high school for a while was Smella.
Oh,
It was
gotta
endearing.
have those friends.
Yeah.
It's good to keep it lighthearted and fun, and it sounds like they definitely helped you do that.
You got to make fun of yourself so they can't make fun of you for them.
True.
Beat them to the punchline.
So tell me, with all the years that you've been battling IBD, you've obviously gone into flare-ups and out. What are some of the things you've learned over the years to help take care of yourself? Are there certain things that you'll do for self-care, or to help yourself relax, or to just put yourself in a better place when you are going through a flare and managing that?
Yeah, so I think the simple things that help are warmth.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I used a lot of heat, like electric heating pads, and now I have those, those kind of bead-filled things that you can put in the microwave. So sometimes if I'm having a rough day, and I'm in some pain, I'll use that while I'm just sitting at home, or to fall asleep and kind of take away some of that tension. Um, when I'm good about it, doing yoga or staying active sometimes does help, because it can get your body active and not really thinking about the pain you might be having. Whereas if you're just sitting around, it can be easy to get caught up in it. But also taking the time for me, mornings are never, I can't really go fast to get ready in the morning. I'm kind of
Mhm.
at will of my body. Um, and so trying to plan into my schedule, enough time to wake up before I have to be somewhere, so that I can have and not feel rushed in the bathroom and take time doing that. And creating those space, to do what I need to do more. Everyone has a morning routine. Like mine just might be, have to have extra time built in for it than someone else would. And so I think that is something that really helps me because when I was younger, I remember sometimes I would go late to school a lot because, school starts at a certain time and you can only wake up so early. So if I have
Mhm.
like a restless night, which lately I haven't had so many, I'm pretty good at sleeping through a night without having to wake up and go to the bathroom. But when I was younger, that was a challenge. And so working, at that point with my school to know why I'm late. But now, as a professional, it's more on
Mhm.
my responsibility of building in that time to allow some wiggle room, or if it is a slow morning, working with my employer to also establish it up front instead of kind of hiding it.
Yeah.
It's an easy disease where if you don't say something, people won't know that you have problems. And if you start showing up late or, you're not at your desk because you're in the bathroom, they
Mm.
might not know why. So when I start somewhere new, I try to, ease into telling them just the gist of, these are some things that might happen. I might have to leave for doctor's appointments or I might be a little late. And this is why, so that everyone's on the same page and there's no surprises.
Mhm.
Really being that advocate for yourself has helped me.
Yeah.
um, but I've never really been great at eating, like having a proper diet that has helped me, something that I've only been working on the last couple years. But I don't
Mhm.
unfortunately have like a you know edible things that have helped me out.
Yeah.
But um,
That's
just really
okay.
being aware of that, and telling, like I eat with friends a lot, and so also communicating with them. I think in today's like day and age, it's a lot more common for people to have IBS as well. So it's a little bit less
Yeah.
stigmatized, I feel, than when I was younger to have issues in this category of your health. And so
Mhm.
I find that when you start talking to people, even if they don't have a disease, they've experienced similar symptoms. So the more open you are, the more understanding they can be. And if you're going to someone's house to eat or you're going out to eat, just kind of being aware and letting people, like I have friends that tell me what I'm not supposed to eat while I'm eating it. So, if you have trouble holding
They're
yourself
extra helpful.
yeah, you got to tell people and they'll remind you if they're good friends, and you can stick it to them and still eat it anyway. But, having people know what works for you, and if you have, a parent or child or family member, loved one that can give you a belly rub once in a while, that's always nice too.
That's awesome. Those are some great tips. And I think it's interesting you mentioned the time in the morning because I'm very much the same way myself. Even when I'm doing good and in remission, I still like to have that extra time in the morning because it helps me to be less stressed because I
Mhm.
know that there have been, times that Crohn's has made it that I need time in the morning and it's, made me later for things. And
Mhm.
but even when I'm doing good, I have my routine and my body just likes to go slow in the morning and I take that time. And I love how you mentioned, you talk to your boss or your, employer about it and that these are certain things that may come up and this is kind of the reality of what it is and that you've got it sounds like a supportive environment that works with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily right now one of my supervisors, he doesn't have a diagnosis really, but he's got a lot of digestive issues, and so we just sit around and powwow sometimes and complain. So that's nice to have someone nearby that understands, where you're
Mhm.
coming from. So if there is something that may come up more severe, I don't have to explain myself too much.
Yeah. And it is interesting because you just mentioned a minute ago about how IBS seems to be a lot more common. And then with your supervisor having some GI issues, it is interesting that, I find when I talk with people about my Crohn's, I do hear frequently people say, oh, yeah, so this person I know has, terrible GI symptoms, or this happens, or
Mm-hmm.
so and so has IBS, or I have IBS. So people, I think gut issues are just a lot more common. And so a lot of people are just eager to relate to it, I guess, and
Yeah.
understanding. And even though it may not be a lifelong chronic condition for them, they're at
Mm-hmm.
least, empathetic and understanding, which is nice.
Yeah, I feel that that's sometimes a double-edged sword because it is something that people can relate to, compared to other diseases.
Mhm.
But it's also,
Mhm.
there's a different, sometimes I'm like, I just drank water today and my stomach is like upset at me for no reason.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, reminded me, she's like, yeah, you have a disease. And I'm like, oh. That's right. Like,
Yeah,
water can upset me because it's not about what I'm putting in my body, it's the body itself. And so that's where,
exactly.
you kind of catch the difference between somebody who might have, a bout with some IBS or some sort of thing that they're
Yeah.
eating that's bothering them, but they can fix it. So the symptoms they might be really, relatable to, but
Mhm.
the ongoing and severity of it is just different.
Yeah, you're spot on 100%.
Yeah. Also, massage. Massage helps before I forget. I enjoy massage because I had a physical therapist once tell me that, I have a protective posture, and so I'm sure there's other sufferers that, um, are Crohn's warriors that also have this protective posture where if your, abdomen is in pain, you tend to scrunch over and kinda hold it and protect yourself, and or you're on the toilet all day, and so that hunched over posture isn't great for your body, and so doing some sort of stretch or chiropractic work or massage to really let go of some of those kinks or tense spots, has offered some relief for me as well as more of the whole body feel.
Yeah, that's a great tip. It's something that I don't think I would have necessarily thought about it until you're sitting there describing it, and it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, when you're scrunched over and just holding. I mean, I've held that posture for so long, for so many times, that the muscles really do need to be relaxed and just help your whole body.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about doing some yoga or staying active, even when you're kind of managing your symptoms and trying to help your body feel better and stronger. What are some of the things that you do to help you kind of help your body? Are there certain, is it just yoga? Are there other activities that you like to do? And do you find that that really helps in the day to day when you're active consistently?
Mhm. Yeah, when I am more active, I definitely feel better. It's hard, when you've had several days of not feeling well to get that motivation to get back on it. But I really enjoy hiking. Running isn't great for me because the up and down of it,
Hmm.
jumping around
Hmm.
isn't so fun. So things that are a bit more calm, any sort of yoga or stretching or meditative, body work is helpful. I used to be a dancer, so I love dance personally. Um,
Hmm.
so whenever I can dance, that's always good time. Um, and when I was younger, I also used to swim. And so sometimes swimming helped because your body's, kind of being held up. And so if you don't have to go to the bathroom when you're in the pool, which can be a pain, just kind of
Hmm.
that relaxing nature of water can also be helpful because your body isn't, especially if you might have like joint pain or something, swimming doesn't have that factor of gravity that a lot of other, physical activities do have. So I haven't swam in a while, but it can be relaxing to kind of relieve some of that pressure from your body, but still get movement in.
Tell me a little bit more. You mentioned meditative body work. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then do you also do frequent meditation sessions? Does that kind of help with your outlook? And talk a little bit more about that side of it.
It's something that I've gotten more into the last couple of years, more mindfulness. But
Hmm.
somebody, I don't remember where I was, but they were telling me that, you have to breathe, just breathe, because when you have a disease like this, you really hold a lot of tension in your gut. And so I find myself having to remind myself, just like take a deep breath, and it really does help relieve some of that internal tension and pain. And if you're not breathing through your belly, you're not really breathing fully. So it's easy
Hmm.
when you're in pain to take shallow breaths, and but really you're going to feel better if you're deep breathing. And so throughout the day, if I notice that I'm kind of being tense, I just kind of sit wherever I am and
Hmm.
take deep breaths, and that tends to help. And so I'm not an expert at it. I don't do it all the time,
Hmm.
but it definitely helps. Um, and also stretching, in the morning or at night before I go to bed, to kind of undo whatever my body, tension has created, um, so that I'm not just living in a crumpled mess all day, every day.
Uh-huh. When you describe it like that,
Yeah. Does it
it
sound
sounds like you
relatable?
definitely need some stretching.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mindfulness is, I find really interesting. That's something that I've been getting very much into myself over the past couple years, of just going down this journey of mindfulness and being aware, and our breath, and even meditation, and just gratitude, and how all of those things play into this kind of harmony with our body. It's pretty interesting, but it really does. I mean, just at the most simple, basic, element, just taking a deep breath and taking a moment to pause and just breathe really does make a difference. So I'm
Mhm.
I'm with you 100% on that. So tell me a little bit. Let's talk about your journey into becoming an advocate. You talked a little bit about when you were at camp when you were younger, and how that made you a little bit more open and easier to share IBD with other people. So, what really compelled you to become an advocate and to start really putting your story out there, and sharing IBD on
Mhm.
social media and just in the larger world?
Yeah. I think my first experience kind of as a public advocate was in high school, when I was the Take Steps, like, honored hero for my local
Mhm.
walk. And so I wrote a little speech about, living with Crohn's and yada yada. And so from then on, um, I tried to take, actually, yeah, that was the first more public. But in elementary school, not far after my diagnosis, I actually did a science project on Crohn's disease, and like talked about it to my class, and I even showed them pictures from my colonoscopy. And so I think just being transparent, throughout the year. I know I have several friends who really don't have many people that know they have the disease, or don't really like to talk about it. And it's unfortunate, because I think it's a great learning opportunity for people, and a chance to share, that you have a disease really gives other people the chance to share whatever they might be going through as well, whether it's Crohn's and colitis or some other form of medical or mental illness. But now that I think about it, I was very transparent from a young age. And so in high school, I also did a project with a group. We had to create a PSA. And so
Mhm.
another member of my team had a family member who had Crohn's or colitis. And so we did a PSA about IBD, and that got shared with some of the school. And so I think I've always been interested in sharing my story, and just being an educator for others about the disease. And how it affects people. And because we can't, it's not a physical thing that you can see, not always at least,
Mhm.
that it's really important to speak up about it. And so as I've, gotten older, and social media has been an increase, as I've entered adulthood and through college, I've chosen, I think the Crohn's and Colitis Week, like the national week, was approved like around the time I went off to college or late in high school. So from then on, it's a great opportunity, not just once a year, but it's to jumpstart during that time of year and really start talking about it. And so I started when I had Facebook, I would share stuff. And then as different platforms, were created, I would try to share stuff when I was going through something really frustrating. I
Mhm.
had Facebook groups with friends from camp or other like ally groups, I guess you could say, and we share like our things we're going through, or have you tried this medicine? And so advocating amongst other people who have Crohn's and colitis has also been helpful with the internet. And really, in more recent years, as I've become more interested in sharing my voice through, so like a blog or a podcast or whatever it might be, um, using like more of a vlog style, so not just like a PSA or a
Mhm.
awareness post, but more of like the reality of, in general, people post a positive on Instagram and social media. And so my reality of life is the illness. Luckily I don't have many other things that take too big of a negative toll on my life. And so when I
Mhm.
am having those tough times, it's really important for my own comfort, and just to get that support or awareness out there that it might look like I'm having a great time traveling and you live in my best life, which I am. But, what you can't see in the pictures is that I was in the bathroom for 2 hours that day, or that my, doctor bills add up every week, and that I have to, drive around town for appointments and all that stuff. And so just as much as I post the fun, exciting stuff, I
Mhm.
thought, why don't I post this other side of my life that's not always so fun, but equally as important. And so
Yeah.
using that to talk about healthcare challenges and finding a good doctor, or, how it's, frustrating to make sure that you have healthcare, and that's another worry, and worry doesn't do well for this disease. And so just
Right.
kind of sharing that with people. I've really gotten good like feedback from people. Some of my friends that don't suffer from an illness, just say like they really enjoy watching when I post a little story, and sometimes I don't hear
Mhm.
anything. So I'm sure people see it and hear it, but sometimes when people share personal stuff like that, they're digesting it for themselves, but they don't really know what to say to someone. And it's
Yeah.
not that I'm looking for, pity or sorrow. So if they don't have anything to say, that's fine. But I do also have people who think that it's nice to hear that. And I'd like to start, sharing more, but it definitely helps when like tomorrow I'm going in for my infusion. And so when I don't feel awkward talking to my phone in front of nurses, I think it's
Mhm.
nice to kind of show like, this is what I'm doing right now, and like share something fun or about what I'm feeling that day physically, health wise, or just to show, not it maybe inspire someone else to share whatever they're going through as well, because everyone's got something, and if you just show the highlights, then we're doing a disadvantage to ourselves and to others.
Exactly. And it's so important to share everything that you've just been talking about because it, just like you said, even if someone doesn't necessarily comment on it, it doesn't mean that it's not, that they're not digesting it or that it's not helping someone else out there because it does make such a difference to be able to see someone else going through the same thing or going through something that you might be facing soon. And so I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're sharing all of that and doing so much to raise awareness. Tell me what the different channels that you are on. You mentioned the vlog. Is that just on like the Instagram, or do you also have a YouTube channel that you're posting this stuff and sharing?
So I don't have a YouTube channel. I have a blog still, but I haven't really been posting on it that well. So I have some archived, pieces on there. It's stellasays.me. And on there I've posted about, what it's like to be sick but not look sick, or what the difference between illness and sickness, because my medications impact my immune system, and so although I might not be having digestive issues on any given day, I'm easily susceptible to colds or sinus infections and a myriad of other health challenges. And so that, being a sick person and also having an illness can bring up its own challenges. And so that's something that I've talked about, especially in in college, when people are often sharing drinks and there's lots of germs going around, and becoming sort of a germaphobe in those shared spaces, and just kind of blogging about those experiences. And on my podcast, I have, which is Trust Me, I'm Funny. That's on several different platforms. You can find it. It's not specifically about Crohn's or colitis, but some of my guests I talk about it with. And I'm trying to think of other ways that I can weave that into it, or maybe interview more people who have stuff, but that's not what that one's intended for. And then on my own Instagram, stellar.car, I tend to put those kind of Instagram stories, or a post with some, a longer caption about stuff. And I've teetered about creating an Instagram specifically for some of that advocacy and more transparency, but I tend to start things and not finish them fully. So the idea has come, but I haven't taken it up to the next level yet. But those are the main.
Well, but then on the flip side, I mean, you're sharing on Instagram, even if it's not only about IBD, your life isn't necessarily only IBD, so so it still works.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's showing that I'm someone that has that and still does all this other stuff, and what that looks like. If only I could show the pain that comes after the beautiful food that I post. That would be great. Now, they haven't invented that button yet.
Yeah, that's something that I think only other cronies and ulcerative colitis fighters can truly understand, is that kind of pain. I used to describe it as, it feels like I've eaten like a shattered window pane.
That's a great description.
And I've heard someone else describe it as having everything wrapped in barbed wire. So it's definitely painful.
Yeah, that I like those descriptions. I usually just say that it's like someone's stabbing me, or I don't know.
Yeah, the stabbing, a gunshot wound, pick any of them.
Yeah.
Well, I will list all of the resources that you just listed, your blog, your podcast, and your Instagram. I'll put all those in the show notes so that people can find those and look for you easily and follow more of your journey, because you've definitely got a lot ahead, and it'll be great to watch your journey as you reach remission, is what I'll be hoping for.
Yes, I hope for that as well.
So is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
Not that I can think of. I think we covered most of, what I've gone through, and those challenges that I've faced, and how I've, kept a positive outlook through it all. So I think we did a justice to my story, and I hope that whatever I've said has, resonated with people, or someone might have gotten a new idea of how to approach the way that they handle their disease, and continue their fight to, improve their condition, and awareness for all of us. And, we might not get our cure, but we can keep fighting hard.
Keep fighting hard and keep lifting each other up.
Definitely.
And I know what you've shared today is definitely going to help someone else out there with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. So I really appreciate you sharing so much of your story, and just coming on the podcast and joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much as well.
I've dedicated most of my life to fitness and health, but as I've grown older and felt the effects of fatigue as I've battled Crohn's, I no longer want to spend hours in the gym every day, which is how I first stumbled across the Cellercise Rebounder. It's become the backbone of my fitness routine these days, giving me the ability to tailor my workouts from gentle movement to intense jumping that literally activates every cell in the body. And the best part is, it only takes 10 minutes a day for an incredible workout. Find out for yourself what a difference Cellercise can make in your health by visiting crownsfitnessfood.com/Cellercise. Thank you for listening to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have an IBD story, either as a patient or a family member that you'd like to share as a guest on this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me an email at crownsfitnessfood@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me and my Crohn's journey, follow me on Instagram using @Crohn'sFitnessFood, or visit my blog for in-depth articles about my struggles and victories with Crohn's through diet, fitness, and lifestyle at www.crownsfitnessfood.com. And finally, remember, be strong, be grateful, and be the warrior that you are.